This is Hannibal from thehannibaltv.com, and this is my weekly Wrestling Observer newsletter review. There is a lot of news this week. It was the post Wrestlemania 36 Observer newsletter. There's also a lot of MMA news. First, I'll get into the WWE news. The Royal Farms Arena in Baltimore has confirmed that WWE's Money in the Bank pay-per-view on May the 10th has been canceled. So they might still tape at the Performance Center, but it's actually canceled for in front of a crowd, which we all know there's not going to be any shows in all likelihood in May or June, at least. WWE is going to be taping multiple weeks of television in Orlando this week. And as someone mentioned in the comments, like AEW taped a ton of television recently, but it's harder for WWE because they got, 3 hours of Raw, 2 hours of SmackDown, 2 hours of NXT, main event, and 205 Live to tape. That's a lot of footage to tape since they seem to be going for the match footage in empty arenas more than other ways of keeping the show going. As far as Roman Reigns, it's unknown when he's going to come back. He took himself out of the WrestleMania main event. He appears to be the only wrestler that decided to pull himself from WWE because of this virus. Of course, he is a top star and he has a lot of money. For a wrestler that's not a top star, if you pull yourself from a show, even though they say it's fine, doesn't matter what they say, they could still not give you as good of an angle as punishment if they don't want you to pull yourself from the show. But of course, they'll tell everyone they can pull themselves if they want. Regarding, Ric Flair's daughter's Charlotte's title win, she's going to be on NXT and Raw. So they always say that they're dividing the brands, but here she is, the NXT champion now. She's also still going to be on the Raw brand, according to the Wrestling Observer. According to Meltzer, also the John Cena versus Bray Wyatt Firefly Funhouse match, which wasn't a match. I'll agree with him on this. It was just a series of skits. It was put together by Bray Wyatt and Bruce Pritchard. John Cena also had some input into the skits. I remember my first WrestleMania was WrestleMania 5, Hogan against Macho Man. And I couldn't imagine Macho Man just teleporting in the middle of that match, or both of them teleporting, then they're suddenly outside the arena, then they're teleporting again, they're in the concession stands, teleporting again, they're in a gym somewhere. Then Macho Man makes the pin on himself for the finish, or Hogan makes the pin on Macho Man himself, then Macho Man evaporates into thin air. This is why I hate wrestling now. Another reason why I hate wrestling is guys like Drew McIntyre, who was putting Brock over publicly before they even had the match. And now that he has been given the title from Lesnar, he was quoted as saying, "Brock is the man. He won't do business with you if he thinks you're not doing the job you should be doing. Brock is a very private person. He doesn't like people too much, but he's all about respect. To have earned his respect means a lot." So it's just, you don't even try and kayfabe it. Brock liked you before, he liked you after, he did you a favor, he put you over. It's just boring. I don't want to watch anything this guy's involved with. Also in WWE news, they did win in viewership the NXT versus AEW battle this week by 1,000 fans, but they put the scheduled NXT TakeOver match between Johnny Gargano against Tommaso Ciampa as the main event, and they still lost the ratings in the 18 to 49 demographic, 0.26 to 0.19. On the AEW side, I heard the Kenny Omega match was really unusual this week. A lot of people complained about it. Raw did a 0.7 rating for the post-WrestleMania Raw, historically one of the biggest Raws of the year. But why would you even want to watch Raw when you have the new champion talking about how grateful he is that Brock put him over publicly? Why would you ever want to watch anything from that company? Due to the virus, Dave Meltzer thinks the situation in Japan has changed. WWE has been trying to buy a Japanese company for a while now, but now the smaller Japanese companies are hurting. So they might actually want to sell to the WWE now that this virus situation has caused financial strain over in Japan. Donald Trump did meet with U.S. sports leaders this week, including Dana White and Vince McMahon, as I've already talked about. But he said that he would like to have the NFL season start on time, September 10th. And he's hopeful to have sporting events in front of an audience again in August. So maybe by SummerSlam, there'll be wrestling events in front of audiences again. In AEW news, as I previously mentioned, they taped a ton of shows last week in Georgia at a wrestling school, and I guess they taped enough shows that they'll have empty arena matches all the way up to May 20th. It doesn't appear like the Double or Nothing show is likely going to happen. It's supposed to be May 23rd, although it hasn't officially been canceled yet. Ted Hart, who I've been covering his legal battles here, according to the Wrestling Observer, the assault charges by his girlfriend, Maria Manick, I guess they're still going forward. He has a trial date coming up on June the 10th. He was released on, I guess, April the 3rd last week. New Japan has announced they're canceling all events through May the 4th. MLW and Ring of Honor are going to remain shut down until further notice. It's not in the Observer, but maybe it is and I missed it, but Angelina Love has re-signed with Ring of Honor for what that's worth, for if there's anyone that still watches Ring of Honor out there. MLW CEO Court Bauer had this statement to make about the coronavirus situation. Straight up, we won't be promoting live events, empty arena, or with fans until this thing looks like it's under control and there is a treatment/vaccine or a way to ensure we're not putting fans, wrestlers, crews, etc. at risk. He also said it's not ideal, but he thinks they can survive on a lot of old footage. And when they return, if people aren't willing to come to live shows, they can go back to Gilt Nightclub in Orlando, which is a small venue, and do tapings there. I guess they get their money from television shows rather than actual live gates. They're not operating off of live gates. And I've seen they were selling tickets for like $10 to one of their recent events that I think got canceled. So it's not like they would have had huge gates. They get their revenue from TV. Although they they were getting pretty good crowds, like growing crowds, bigger crowds than they did in last year, for instance. Earlier this year, they were doing all right, getting 1,000 or over a lot of the time, which is good for a company like that. I did do an interview with Serlina De La Renta, one of the top managers from MLW, last week. It's up in full on this channel. I think she's highly talented. She wouldn't talk to me about contract details. I don't know, with a smaller company like MLW, how they go about paying their wrestlers if there's no events. I know they didn't have a big payroll because, for instance, Ted Hart told me, I don't know if this is true or if he was working me, Ted Hart said he was making about $500 a month when he was with MLW because they only do one show a month when they were taping. So I don't know what everyone else makes. I assume that Jacob Fatu was signed to a bigger contract because, for instance, AEW and WWE were interested in Jacob Fatu before he re-signed with MLW. So I can assume that they must have some bigger contracts, but I wonder what the pay situation is for their wrestlers if there's no events. Same with Ring of Honor. I know Ring of Honor is a pretty rich company. They're probably still paying their wrestlers. They only do about three events a month when they were running, and those events weren't drawing, so it's not like they were getting huge gates. There was a Pro Wrestling Noah show in an empty arena on the 7th of April, a couple days ago. Dr. Wagner Jr. and Rene Dupree, former Great North Wrestling Canadian champion, beat Kenu and Masa Kitamiya. So the Canadian boy and the Mexican boy were victorious. In UFC news, as I reported earlier today, Dana White announced UFC 249 will not be taking place anymore due to pressure from ESPN. All events are going to be on hold from the UFC for the immediate future. I know I got questions and comments I'll get to after. The belief is ESPN reacted to a California senator that made a statement regarding MMA events happening, even though the California government has banned sporting events. This senator stated, quote, "I'm concerned by reports that UFC plans to hold a pay-per-view event in California in defiance of the state's shelter-in-place order. This event would involve dozens of individuals flying to California and arriving to a casino for a purpose no one can honestly claim is essential. I understand this event is scheduled to take place on tribal land and therefore it is not subject to state law. However, as at best, this event ties up medical sources and sends a message that shelter-in-place orders can be fouled. At worst, participants and support staff could carry the virus back to their home communities and increase its spread. I call on UFC and the Tachi-Yukut tribe, sorry if I mispronounced that, to reconsider this event until a later date." So the senator made that statement. It's interesting that no senators in Florida have made that statement regarding WWE, as they have wrestlers coming in from out of state, wrestling with each other, getting sweat, sometimes spit on each other, the announcers sitting next to each other, the referee being in the ring. So I think, and then they're flying or driving back to their home states. So MMA has been put a stop to, but somehow, I guess because it's not considered a real sport and it's not regulated in many states, wrestling is still able to slip through the cracks. But I am a bit jealous of these WWE and AEW wrestlers that are allowed to get out of their house. And let's face it, most wrestlers love wrestling. They get to do what they love. Well, people like me are stuck inside their house, can basically only run and do home workouts, can't even go to the gym, basically can only go to the grocery store. So I am a little jealous of these wrestlers that still get to travel around doing what they love, have access to gyms at the performance center. They're lucky from that standpoint. There was a break-in at UFC fighters Anthony Smith's home. He was able to fight off the guy who was then held and released. Smith has requested a restraining order as he has a family and is concerned the guy could come back. This guy had previous legal issues, but I guess it probably has to do with this virus. A lot of criminals are getting released. So it's bizarre, okay? What I find bizarre is the criminals getting released, that all you people are going to, well, not all of you, but some people have whined about my complaints that alcohol stores are open. I do believe that if alcohol stores are open, I should be able to still work out. Yes, these alcoholics can go into withdrawal, but I am in gym withdrawal. I'm losing my mind, not lifting weights. Yeah, I don't have any sympathy for the alcoholics. And as I've been stating all week, I was told by my doctor on Monday, I have a cancer patch on me, and the cancer doctors are not working during this lockdown. That is crazy. The cancer doctors are not considered essential, but wrestlers can still wrestle. People that work at the beer store can still work. Why can't cancer doctors? Cancer is more deadly than the coronavirus. So that I don't understand that. And mine is a patch that needs to be cut out. And the faster it's cut out, faster the problem will go. If it stays there, it could grow or multiply. So I was pretty pissed off to hear that. And then some people messaged me with more serious issues, someone that had it all over their face, and his treatments have been canceled. Other people told me their chemotherapy treatments have been suspended. So, yeah, it's interesting the way priorities are. Alcohol is more important than cancer specialists. The first pro wrestler or MMA fighter to get the coronavirus is a Brazilian fighter, Erik Silva, 35 years old. He currently fights in Bellator. He has fought for UFC. I believe he lives in Brazil. His entire family tested positive for the virus. He says that they're all fine, and their biggest concern is lack of information and being nervous. Everyone is more at ease now, he said. We asked the people that work in our house not to come, and there's the family that has it or the people living in the house are staying isolated and following the doctor's orders. And finally, in Bellator news, Isaiah Chapman, 30, was shot to death outside his home in Akron, Ohio at 9:40 p.m. on April the 7th by Christopher Belor, 29. So Isaiah is a Bellator fighter. who was also fought in the World Series of Fighting, and he was shot in Akron. So 2 criminal instances from the world of MMA where the fighters were the victims this week. So I'll take a look at some of your questions here. John Jones versus alcohol. Winner, alcohol. Someone says it's criminal that they're not getting their school credits. AJRX, is Brock and Becky old news? Someone fill me in. What's going on with Brock and Becky? I don't know. There's nothing in the Observer I saw. Richard M. says the world is canceled for 2020. Jake Inator 722 said, interesting, no star ratings for Mania this year. There is a reason for that, and Meltzer explained it. He doesn't feel like giving the matches his typical ratings is fair because they cut and edited the matches. They reshot screw-ups. They were done in front of no crowd, and they were shot more like a TV show than matches. So he didn't think it's fair, for instance, to give a match a rating when they could have like edited it together. It could have been shot twice, 2 things mixed together, for instance, or mistakes could have been cut out. So if the match had mistakes that were cut out, it's not fair to give it a 5-star rating when you have, let's say, Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair in front of a crowd with no safety net getting 5 stars. Everyone, what happened to my do-rag gimmick? Jay Jones says, I never have worn a do-rag other than once. I did a promo for the last Tough Enough, which had well over 130,000 views. But even though I had one of the highest views promos, they didn't use me on the last Tough Enough. And funnily enough, the males that got contracts out of the last Tough Enough, the guy that actually won, was fired shortly after, and then they gave another guy, ZZ, a contract, and he just couldn't cut it. So it's so funny that the 2 males from the last Tough Enough that ended up getting the chance weren't actually tough enough. And I would have been way more entertaining on the show as well. German 1952 Mantel is making fun of WrestleMania here. Drew McDuck should get used to no audience, Debo says. I agree. WWE sucks for years now. I agree. And by the way, the ratings were declining and the popularity was declining before this coronavirus ever started. They have no sports competition right now. Lots of entertainment sources are actually doing way better due to everyone being home looking for entertainment. They are actually getting less popular. What steroids do I need to take to look like 1996 Shawn Michaels? Kerpal321 says, I don't know. But my next compilation video coming out is about the Click. So I hope you guys enjoy that. It should be up tomorrow. Chris Ruth says WWE hasn't been a good product since 2014. I personally stopped watching the TV shows around 2005. James D, how was my boxing training last night? Good. I did post on my Facebook that I was looking for people that knew some good new combos to let me know, because my home training is basically free squats, push-ups, sit-ups, and using my punching bag. And I'm looking for new combos to practice while I'm stuck here. Mike DeLeo, Doink the Clown for the Hall of Fame. You never know. Barbarian for the Hall of Fame. Yes. Eric G. Feshcock says, Happy Easter from Cornwall, Ontario, somewhere I've wrestled numerous times. Cocoa Butter Barbie. So Corona is ending wrestling? No, not really. Wrestling is like the cockroach of like entertainment that is still being taped. They are still actually putting on wrestling matches, just no matches in front of crowds. In Newfoundland, we are being told we're shut down till November. Craig Carreen says, well, I also heard, I forget which state, but one of the governors of one of the states also said, I believe, it could have been also a Senate member. I forget exactly, but they were saying that they were looking at the lockdown till Thanksgiving, American Thanksgiving. Oh, my God. I pray that doesn't happen. Speaking of praying, by the way, I forgot to mention this earlier. Hulk Hogan put out some weird religious message this week that he feels this whole thing has been caused by God, and we all just need to pray more because he's mad at us. It was also in the Observer this week that Hogan and WWE were in talk to do some type of appearance at WrestleMania 36, but the sides could not agree on money. Kerpal321 says he's in California. It's going to be a long time here too. I was supposed to be in California last month, and I really like it there. And it sucks that I'm stuck here for now. Dwayne Norvell, it's not worth the money to wrestle for WWE if you truly appreciate and love the biz. I'd rather stay in small town shows. Well, let me explain to you the problem with that. In small town shows, sometimes the promoters will screw you over. Sometimes you get $20, sometimes $50, sometimes $100. If you're an ex-WWE star, maybe a good amount more. But WWE can actually make a living wrestling the independent circuit for the most part. You cannot really. And it's not like a job with benefits or a job where you can save a fortune. So you, as an independent wrestler, unless you're one of the higher up ones, you have to work another job and wrestle. So this is one thing. I've heard so many people that have switched to AEW complaining about WWE creative and how horrible it is to work there. These guys are making hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. If somebody tells me they'll pay me $1 million a year to do an accent I don't like and do angles I don't like, I would rather do that any day than my regular job where I don't get to travel around the world, be a TV star, be known by fans around the world. So yeah, even the worst WWE job is better than an independent wrestler not knowing where his next paycheck's going to come from unless you've already made your money and you're just doing independent wrestling just to make some extra cash. Motor Stash, the main problem with wrestling today is that they have TV writers coming up with storylines. Doesn't make sense. Would you hire a baseball coach to coach a football team? No, and the thing is, wrestling isn't wrestling anymore. It's just not. I think we have to start accepting that reality after that Firefly Funhouse match. It's not wrestling. It's just entertainment. It's goofy. You're not going to be able to suspend your disbelief anymore. It's just a show. Wrestlers are going to have their matches, talk friendly before and after their matches, and still expect us to care.